High Commander Thagath. The time was upon us, and I could barely contain my impatience that the operation was taking this long to happen. I watched in excitement and pride as the hustle and bustle of the various bridge crew prepared for our invasion. It's time to get our revenge on those damn insects that think that they can live in our galaxy. After the humiliating loss of the Indomitable Crusade, there were few things on anyone's mind about these Terrans except how nice it would be to crush them, both figuratively and literally. My mandibles clacked in anticipation of the inevitability of their struggles. The plan was a simple one, which was surprising because the plans that were made by High Command were usually extremely complex. The first step on this plan was to amass all the ships that we had at our disposal and congregate at a single point. The second step was to capture one of the Terran's many merchant vessels. The less defended, the better. We coerced a surrender from those insects, teaching them to fear us like they should, and knocked out their communications before they could send out a distress call in the process. They had deleted their computer systems, effectively bricking their ship. That wasn't what we were after. The next step was to, at the threat of the death of their colleagues, pack a shuttle of theirs full of as much explosives as we could, and have them fly into the strength through diplomacy. We also rigged up a QE transponder that would cut out the moment that their shuttle exploded. At this point, all we had to do was wait. The Terrans were assured that they would be outside of the range of the explosives once they docked with the ship. I clacked my mandibles. They were going to die anyways, just like the rest of their pitiful species. I turned to my communications officer. "What is the status of the shuttle?" I asked. "Still broadcasting, High Commander," came the reply. I clacked my mandibles again, this time impatiently. "As soon as that link goes dark, put us en route to the Terran's ship. They will learn their place in this galaxy soon." "At your command, High Commander," was the response from my navigator, having already made the necessary calculations for a jump. Before I had the opportunity to respond, my communications officer piped up. "The link just went down, High Commander." I clacked my mandibles. "We hit them now, while they don't have any time to react to our presence." "At your command, High Commander," said the navigator once more before turning the warning lights on. I braced for the inevitable tug at reality that came from faster-than-light travel as our fleet blinked out of reality, and less than a minute later, blinked back into reality. The truly massive shape of the Terran ship that was function over all else. Considering that my own species also valued function over all else, I would have considered it a beautiful ship. That appreciation ended when I saw the massive hole in its hull, easily large enough to start the boarding operations. I clacked my mandibles in anticipation. We'll have to be quick, but with the strength we have amassed, this will be easy enough.
Admiral Fernando Fearless Villa. "Shit," I shouted, as I picked myself off the ground and leaned heavily on the desk of my ready room. My head was pounding from the migraine that I already had. Gritting my teeth in pain, I activated my comm. "What the fuck was that?" I shouted, as I shook my head and tried to clear the ringing from my ears. "There's been an explosion in Hangar Bay 33, possibly sabotage and decompression in the adjoining areas of the ship, but we have bigger problems than that," came the word from my chief engineer, terror seeping into her voice. "What the fuck could possibly be worse than a catastrophic hull breach?" I asked. "Contacts, sir, hundreds of them," the voice of the radar technician spoke up. "Yalayan make, sir." I froze. How in the hell did they pull this one off? We knew that their ship count was this high, but why the hell aren't they committing to the defense of their homeworld? Are they really that confident that they can get the big stick to reroute to our position? What the hell is their game? Send a distress signal to Terra. Get the whole damn Sol defense fleet here. Otherwise, we aren't going to make it, I said, as I made purposeful strides to the door. With the push of a button, the door opened and showed to me the bridge of the strength through diplomacy. The usually orderly and calm environment that usually graced this area was replaced with the frantic putting out of fires, some metaphorical, while others were literal. As a small fire had started, presumably from a loose wire. I walked purposefully to my command chair and sat down, pointing to my communications officer. "What's the status of the distress call?" "Our entire QE network was taken out in the blast. We only have short-range comms right now." "Shit. Get one of our escorts to send out a distress call to Terra. Get them to bring the entire Sol defense fleet." It's going to take at least an hour for them to get here, supplied my security officer from one side of the bridge, in between giving orders for the boarding operations we would inevitably have to do. He was right, as he always was. I nodded and got into the conference calls with all the ship captains in our escort group. Everyone was already there and waiting for me. "Any damage to report?" I asked. After getting a no from everyone, I nodded. Thank God for that. Ladies and gentlemen, the name of the game today is holding what we got. The primary objective is the safeguarding of information about Terra. If you get boarded and are about to lose your ship to the enemy, follow Broken Tie's protocol and scuttle your ship. Everyone's face hardened at that. They all knew the consequences if Terra's location was leaked. I don't want any heroics from anyone. As soon as I had gotten confirmation from the captains in my command, I continued. Our second priority is the protection of civilians aboard the Strength through diplomacy. Seeing how this ship is easily the biggest target in this confrontation, they will most likely target us. I paused to catch my breath as I saw the ships get into the firing range of our escorts. I don't need to remind you that this is the largest concentration of Terran civilians outside of the Sol system, so remember what you're fighting for. Everyone's faces got even darker at the implications of what the Yaleans would do to them. Until the fleet gets here, don't die. But that goes without saying. The carrier Rabbit's Foot will coordinate with the corvettes, Double and Trouble, to run interference, while battleships, Bells and Whistles, Roosevelt, and failure to communicate will soften them up for boarding operations. The Strength through diplomacy will provide fire support where we can. If you're about to go down, take as many as you can. Does everyone understand their roles? The ship captains nodded before disconnecting from the call, some shouting orders at their crews before they even got off the call. I looked over the threat assessment hologram. I watched in horror as the hundreds of contacts turned into thousands as Yalean carriers disgorged hundreds of attack crafts each. How long until the Sol Defense Fleet arrives? I asked. 45 minutes, responded my communications officer. Shit, I said as I tried to massage my migraine away before it got any worse. The fortitude of Terrans has been rumored by those that we call allies. Let's not disappoint them, I said, as I watched blows start to be traded amongst the participants of the battle. May God help us all.
Airman Jackson. I could feel the shudder of the Rabbit's Foot as she got hit with another salvo from one of the thousands of enemy ships surrounding us. I nearly stumbled as I pulled my flight suit over my pajamas and sealed the helmet, feeling slight discomfort before the oxygen started flowing. After some fumbling with the seals on the gloves, I was finally rated for space, just in time too, as I walked into the hangar and saw my WSO already going through his portion of the pre-flight checklist and arming of our craft. As my eyes swept across the rest of the football-sized hangar, I saw countless others doing the same thing. Some were already done, passing the time before we got the green light, doing things like praying or speaking with their loved ones, most likely for the last time. I took a moment to take it all in. After all, this was the first time that humanity had ever clashed on this scale with the aliens that called this galaxy home. And were this any other kind of engagement, I would be glad to hop into the cockpit of my fighter and teach these aliens what it means to mess with humanity. But this was different. They had every advantage that they could ever hope for, and they were gunning after the largest concentration of Terran civilians outside of the Sol system. I could feel my hands shake. My wife and kids are on that ship. I couldn't help but imagine their corpses being suspended in the vacuum of space, with no rescue ships in sight. Ruminating that I saw my WSO finally look up from his consoles and extend a hand to me. About damn time you showed up. I thought I would have to fly this bird on my own. I smiled and grabbed his hand, trying to minimize the shaking in my hands. He pulled me swiftly up to the cockpit as I strapped myself in. You know that I wouldn't miss the chance to kill some uppity Xenos, I said as I quickly got through my pre-flight checklist, trying to keep my hands from shaking too much. It's all looking green over here, Tower, I said in the mic. Copy Airman, hot insertion into the AO in 30 seconds. I nodded and gave my WSO a thumbs up as the cacophony of the hangar suddenly ended. The air was evacuated from the massive chamber. If it wasn't for my ragged breathing and the hum of the fighter's engine, I would have thought that I had gone deaf. Out of the frying pan, I mumbled to myself, and into the fire. My WSO replied before the hangar door opened, and we were treated to the first sight of this battle. It looked like a drone swarm, but instead of the tiny but still deadly drones I was accustomed to seeing, each member of the swarm was easily 6 times the size of our own fighter craft. While they tried to avoid the anti-air fire from the carrier, those guns were designed to hit targets significantly faster and smaller than they were. A small comfort. I started to do breathing exercises as we were launched out of the hangar, the inertia dampeners already feeling the strain of the G-forces that we were subjecting it to. My breathing hitched as we went into the first turn, the lock-on warning already blaring. If we make it out of here, it'll be a miracle.
Captain Kaushal. I breathed a sigh of relief as I looked at the hollow projection of the battlefield. The Rabbit's Foot was able to get all 2,500 fighters out of her hangars and into the battle. The balance of power is still very much in their favor, but now we at least have a fighting chance. I turned to conference call I was in with the captains of the Double in Trouble. As if it were some weird twist of fate, they were both captained by identical twins that were impossible to tell apart if it weren't for the ID tags that the system helpfully put on the 2 of them. All our fighters are out and making their way and are engaging the enemy. What's the status of your ships? I asked. Apart from most of the crew getting woken up in the middle of the night, we are running at peak performance, one of them said. Just point us at a problem, and it'll stop being one, he boasted with a shrug. The other smiled. Couldn't have said it better myself. Line 'em up and we'll knock them down. I nodded, turning my attention back to the tactical overlay. I winced as I saw that in the minute that I wasn't looking that the friendly count had dropped by over 100. I highlighted a battleship that was getting a little too close to the Rabbit's Foot. Intercept that one, and target their engines and reactor. Intel from the Indomitable Crusade shows that the armor there isn't as thick as it should be. Both nodded and turned to their respective crews, bellowing orders for the crew to fire up the railguns, along with the various weapon systems on their ships. A moment later, a hole appeared in the enemy ship, which was then quickly capitalized by the Double in Trouble, following up with any weapon that they could think of to make the hole wider until an explosion was seen and the gun turrets on the battleship stopped firing at us. I let go of the breath that I wasn't aware I was holding on to. I silently made a tally before turning back to the twins. 1 down, 400 battleships to go, I said with a half smile. If any ships get within this radius, I said while highlighting a certain radius around the Rabbit's Foot, focus on them, otherwise the fighters aren't going to have a place to rearm and refuel. Oh yeah, that'll be really easy, one of them said sarcastically before his professionalism reasserted itself. We'll try our best, but we can't guarantee that nothing is going to break through. I nodded as I looked at the clock that the Admiral had made. 40 minutes. Just 40 more minutes.